and the elections are still some 6 to 9 months away. We'll have to wait and see when the elections are called and what the currents in the country are at that time. But it's very clear that in what was essentially an election campaign speech by the Prime Minister, that he didn't say a word about the mounting unemployment in the country. He talked to Kerala youth anywhere. This is what you hear. Where will they get jobs at the moment? He doesn't say anything about the mounting inflation in the country, which hit a record almost 12% last month. And we're looking at a situation where common man's food items, vegetables, not just tomatoes, even vegetables and similar items have seen a record increase. If you look at the breakdown of the consumer price index, it's shocking how much inflation we all have to put up with in some areas which are vital commodities. Then you've got this whole problem of the increasing communalism and communal hatred in our country. We've seen Manipur burning for 3 months with no action by the government. We've seen Haryana burning for a couple of weeks in a sophisticated 21st century city like Gurgaon. You're finding Muslims fleeing that area. This is not a rosy picture we can all paint. So I think that what people will allow to influence their voting decision, I don't think the Prime Minister can predict and I can't predict. But there will be various considerations in their mind and not just the ones the Prime Minister wishes them to bear in mind.
So the Nehru Memorial Museum has been renamed as Prime Minister's Museum. So how do you look at it? The Congress has said that the BJP is trying to destroy the legacy of India.
You know, it's a pity that it came to this. I think that the idea of expanding what the building showcases to accommodate other Prime Ministers is an unexceptionable idea. In fact, it's good to encourage all the students, children, and general members of the public to be aware of the contributions of all Prime Ministers. I have no difficulty with that. But in the process, it's rather petty to take away the name of the first Prime Minister who led the interim government, who was Prime Minister upon independence, who was so far the longest serving Prime Minister at 17 years. You could have continued calling it the Nehru Memorial Prime Minister's Museum and Library. You don't have to refuse to add other Prime Ministers. You can put that, but also keep the original name. This pettiness is unfortunate, and it shows a certain bitterness towards our own historical past, which I believe is not worthy of a government that has such a good majority, so much confidence in themselves. They should at least show that big-heartedness that you expect that comes with a big majority. You know, our first Prime Minister had said that he's not the Pradhan Mantri, he's the Pradhan Sevak. A phrase that was echoed 13 Prime Ministers later by Mr. Narendra Modi. He could have also paid Nehruji the tribute of keeping his name in a building where he had lived. This was also the house of the Prime Minister. Before this whole complex in Racecourse Road or Lok Kalyan Marg was built, Nehruji lived there. And to continue to name the place after such a giant of our history who also lived there would have been a very simple thing to do. And I think it's become an example of a certain pettiness that I wish we didn't have in our politics. Manipur has been a slow-burning horror, which has been an absolute stain on our nation. It has been extremely painful to witness for the last 3 months what has been going on. 160 to 200 people have been killed. We are seeing large numbers of churches destroyed, desecrated, damaged. People have been uprooted from their homes. Thousands of homes have been burned or destroyed. People are living in camps, refugee camps within their own country, and doing so in pitiable conditions where children are even in danger of malnutrition. It's a terrible, terrible situation. And of course, the attacks on women, the public humiliations, rapes, murders, targeting women are an absolute affront to any notion of our being a civilized country. So it really has shaken the conscience of India everywhere. Kerala is very far from Manipur, but it's been in the headlines here every day for 3 months. To my mind, when India is going around the world calling for harmony and humanity and so on in the G20, many will notice that harmony and humanity is lacking in our own country and needs to be restored first before we preach to others about it. So I would urge the government, in the interest of their own global credibility, to do what is necessary to bring about peace and reconciliation. We can't have a partition within our own country. We can't have refugee camps in our own country. We can't have this kind of humiliations taking place daily and loss of life and violence. It needs to be settled on a war footing, by which I even mean that the army, as Rahul Gandhi has suggested, could be employed. I had called for President's rule in May. There are many, many things that could have been done to tackle the situation with a firmer hand than we have seen. But for that, of course, the government has to show a political will that it does not seem to have been prepared to demonstrate on this issue.
नमस्कार, मैं हूं मानक गुप्ता। अगर आपको हमारा ये वीडियो पसंद आया हो तो इसे लाइक और शेयर जरूर करें और हां, हमें सब्सक्राइब और फॉलो करना ना भूलें ताकि आप देश और दुनिया की कोई खबर मिस ना करें। तो जुड़े रहिए हमारे साथ और देखते रहिए न्यूज़ 24।